I think we need to take all kinds of statistics in this area of trafficking a little cautiously, because at my office we've come to agree, as well as in many agencies in the UN, that there is really no rigorous and sound methodology to ascertain the number of figures, a number of people who are trafficked in a field which is so underground, so invisible, and so clandestine. So what we have is basically projections. And what we are finding out is that, many researchers in many countries, for instance, will conflate undocumented migrant workers with trafficking, or people in the informal sector, which is not regulated, with trafficking, or the number of women and people in the sex industry with trafficking, or with those who are unaccompanied minors with trafficking when it comes to children. So, a lot of things are being put under the rubric of trafficking. I think I can understand the tendency to ascertain the magnitude of this problem by trying to figure out how many people are being trafficked, because it does make a difference if there are 5 or if there are 5,000. But I think we really, really do need to be cautious about figures. And just to give you an example, a very personal one, several years ago, it seems now, in 1990, I was doing my doctoral work on trafficking in Nepal and in the South Asian region. And that time, the figures for trafficked women and girls in the sex industry were 5,000 to 7,000 per month, it was said, were being trafficked into the sex industry in India. In 2005, I was looking at some reports again of how many are trafficked in terms of figures, and the figure remained unchanged. And the same is true also of Bangladesh. So I think there's also a tendency to, somebody puts out a figure, to recycle those and really not to go back and do serious work. But I think serious researchers and people in the UN have been alerted to this and are working very hard on developing a methodology, even if it is to project, but to project with some rigor and some scientific base.
Anne, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes. The problem of statistics is enormous. There's a project in Bangkok with UNESCO that has tried to verify the statistics from all different sources, from the U.S., from the European Union, from UN agencies, and they've really not been able to verify any of the figures. In fact, in one of them, they traced it. What they've been doing is tracing back, and they traced back, and they found out at one meeting, it was at a UN meeting, someone mentioned a figure of 1 million in this particular area, and that became the UN figure. So it's been very, very difficult to really know the scope of the problem. And it also goes back to the problem that I was raising, that, people are looking at only a particular sector, only looking at women. So there have been a lot of snowballing research where people will contact others they know to get figures, and they will contact others. Well, they end up contacting people who are doing similar work and not working with other populations, so that they're not gathering the statistics about, say, trafficking of men and boys in West Africa or in Cambodia. So it's a real serious issue. But there has been some attempt. I read recently a piece of research done by a professor in Florida who went into Cambodia trying to verify figures there. And he actually went on the ground with researchers going around looking only at sex sector trafficking and actually counting numbers. So he has a methodology that he has used going to, I think he went to like 50% or a certain number of brothels anyway, and areas in Phnom Penh. Now that's research that somebody else could go out and verify, and there's very little evidence-based research that is being used out there. So that also then leads to, how many programs you have, what kind of programs you have, where the funding goes, who gets the funding, and then you end up, because you have these skewed statistics, with a lot of money and energy going to one particular area of the world or one particular form of trafficking, mainly of trafficking into the sex sector, and the traffickers are free to do whatever they want to in other sectors because people just say, oh, well, that's labor exploitation, and we're all used to that, and we see it every day, and it's not trafficking.